people professionally struggle, not because of talent or competency, but because they misread people. They misread the relationships, they misread organizational culture, they misread timing, they misread the room in general.
Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we are diving into taboo topics and redefining the rules for women of color leaders. Get ready as we share the stories and amplify the voices of extraordinary women of color. From navigating workplace challenges to celebrating triumphs, on this podcast, we've got you covered. So buckle up and join us as we embark on today's empowering journey.
Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we empower women in the pursuit of leadership and management roles. I'm your host, Felicia Smith, the founder of The Climb. And each week on this podcast, we pull back the curtain on the workplace realities women of color face, offering honest conversation, practical insights to help you navigate leadership with confidence and to keep climbing without doing it alone. So today's episode is emotional intelligence, Part 3. We talked about self-awareness, self-management. Now we're in the third part of that quad, which is social awareness. So we talk about leading yourself. We talked about how leading in an environment with other people. But here's the thing you got to know. Leadership is never practiced in isolation, right? The same way that applying pressure teaches you a lot about your self-awareness and self-management, in social awareness, you learn the most about it in meetings or in teams, in difficult conversations, during disagreements, during change. Like, this is something that you have to be surrounded around people to really study and flex this skill. One of the greatest leadership skills you can develop is really learning how to accurately read people in the environment around you. And let's talk about what read we're talking about. I'm not talking about reading the girls or giving somebody a piece of your mind. The read we are talking about today is your ability to pay attention and focus in a room and understand the complexities or how other people are feeling in that environment. Okay, so we're not reading the girls, we're talking about reading the room. Okay, so some people, professionally really struggle. And this is a big area, not because of talent or competency, but because they misread people. They misread the relationships, they misread organizational culture, they misread timing, they misread the room in general. And when that happens, you could think that you have a great idea, but it falls flat. You can think that you are leading something or influencing something, but you lose influence, or a relationship becomes strained because the person lacks awareness of what's going on in that environment. They lack that social awareness. So today is really not about a person being understanding people to manipulate them, because oftentimes people think that social awareness is used as this tool of manipulation. It is not. Social awareness is all about understanding people enough to be able to relate and understand how you work with them better, how you have discussions with them better, how do you be more relational in a way that feels comfortable for both you and that individual. Okay, so let's go into our first segment, which is Somebody Should Have Told Me. And we talk about all the realities of which we wish we knew about the topic. And in this case, we're talking about social awareness, right? So someone should have told me that every conversation that's happening, it's not always about what's being said out loud. There is so much more that's being said in quiet than out loud. So when you start early in your career, people always talk about being prepared for the meeting, making sure you have your agenda, you have your facts and figures. I'm a finance person by trade, so making sure all your spreadsheets, everything is primed for the discussion, right? That you have all the things you need to discuss. And then you go into the meeting, you discuss your priorities, or you discuss whatever, your courses of action, whatever you're trying to get accomplished in that meeting. But what people don't talk about, and what I realize is That is an important part, but it's not the largest part of what happens in a room. That what's most important in that room is not only what's being said, but the underlying things that's happening. Who's aligned with whom? Who's hesitant about the topic? Who may be protecting something in that conversation? Who may have already made their mind up before they got there? They had done decided they either like what you're going to talk about or they're not going to like it, right? Who is influencing that conversation without saying anything at all? Who is listening? Who's uncomfortable? All of these things are so important. And when I realized all the things that were at play in those conversations, I realized that I had to do more than listen to words. I really had to start to pay attention to people and studying people. And that really changed how I showed up in meetings and as a leader. Now, I will tell you, I really like, I kind of geek out on the psychology of people and how people interact or whatever. So this is like, I'm going to be honest, this is my jam. But not only that, is because I think it's so important as a leader, the ability for you to be relational, the ability for you to create long and lasting relationships, you have to be able to have social awareness. Some of the most important things in leadership are never spoken. They're communicated through other venues, silence, body language, like this, or something that's that subtle is giving you a vector on what is going on in that room. The tone of a person's conversation, the timing, whether they are speeding up or they're slowing down or they're emphasizing something at very particular points of that conversation, the energy of a room. I mean, if you're paying attention, you can feel the energy of a room shift, right? From something that's positive to, ooh, this feels contentious, or this feels like there's a little push and pull going on between two parties. Who was a person looking at, right, in that meeting? Who are they not looking at? Who are they avoiding eye contact with? Who's getting interrupted? Who never gets interrupted in a meeting? Leadership really requires us, and I just say for most people, even if you're a leader or not, when you're in these meetings, it requires us to see what everyone else is missing. Okay. So let's move on to segment 2, which is truth is. And I'm going to start with one that I think is a misnomer. People think that reading the room is intuition. I don't think it's intuition. I think that reading the room is being a person who's observant. It's an observation. It's paying attention. It's slowing down enough to notice the patterns. So some people think it can't be taught. I believe it can, because it's all about recognizing that people are often communicating far more in behavior than they are with words. So one of the biggest mistakes leaders often make is assuming that everyone is experiencing a situation the same way. I can guarantee you 100% of the time that's not true. Very few people are experiencing a situation the exact same way that you are experiencing it. Because depending on a decision, if someone makes a decision in a meeting, for one person, it created fear. For another person, it could be confusion. For another person, it can be relief. And what social awareness requires us to ask is, what might this experience be like from their perspective? Okay. What might their experience be like from their perspective? Taking yourself outside of yourself and really evaluating how others are experiencing a thing. Okay. So empathy does not mean that you agree. Okay. Doesn't mean that when you look outside yourself, when you see their perspective, that you say, oh, well, I'm on their side. Nope. All it means is now you understand, right? You can completely disagree with someone and agree with their point, but you can still understand why they feel the way they feel. That, my friends, is leadership maturity. And that is something that I try to do. I'm gonna tell you, there's a lot of times that I fundamentally disagree with something, but I can also take the opportunity to step outside of myself and understand their perspective, even if I don't agree with the perspective. I understand where they're coming from enough to say, okay, I understand what you just said. Those spots got it. I understand why you feel that way. I just don't feel the same way. So organizational awareness is a part of this also. And it's the second layer. And this is where very brilliant people struggle because organizations have cultures, history, politics, power structures, unwritten rules, relationships that were already formed, influences, all of these things that already exist. And none of these things are on an org chart. So when you walk into an organization and you're like, hey, I need to look at this thing, you are looking at something that does not tell you all of those dynamics. So you're not going to be able to find them, but they are real and they are sometimes embedded deep in the fabric of that organization. And so great leaders understand both. They understand the formal organization and then the informal organization. So the org chart and what's not on the org chart. And so if you are not a person who's going into something wedded to your own view and you have you've taken the time to understand the perspectives and have the conversation, it really does position you to be a strong leader. Reading the room isn't about changing who you are. Not at all. As a matter of fact, the only thing you have to change is whether or not you have the ability to think outside yourself. That's what you'd have to have. The ability to think outside of your perspective and your position and look at somebody else. Because it's really about understanding kind of where you are and where that person is. I always say, and this is somebody else's metaphor, but where you sit is where you stand. If I am sitting in a chair as a CEO of X company, my perspective is going to be from the perspective of X company. But if I'm the CEO of company A, my perspective is going to be from company A because I am sitting in company A like that other person is in company X, right? So when I say where you sit is where you stand, meaning the organization where you're sitting, where you're going to stand up on those issues is in support of that. So social awareness is understanding where a person sits is where they're standing. So their perspective often mirrors that of their organization because they're a part of that organization. And so you have to remember that, right? So how do you really become socially aware is the question. So let's move to our another rung mended and climbs segment. And we're going to talk about what? The 3 practices, because we are on our 3s for sure. So the first practice is you have to observe before you can contribute. So before speaking, you have to watch, listen, notice what's the energy, ask yourself questions, who's influencing the room, who's unusually quiet, what's not being said. This reminds me of a song. I don't remember if we made this song up when we were little. I think it was my cousin who made it up, but the song was like, stop, look, and listen. Here's something for you. So that's what you got to do. You got to stop, look, and listen to figure out what's for you, what you need to know, what's not being said. You have to be observant. You can never be socially aware if you can't think past yourself, if you can't pay attention enough to understand that there's more perspectives out there. So the first practice, be observant. Very, very important. Second practice, become curious. And I love the word curious because I learned the most about being curious in becoming a coach. So instead of assuming, ask questions. What am I missing? What perspective haven't I considered? What might be influencing this reaction? Curiosity truly, truly, truly creates empathy. Curiosity creates empathy. So if you find yourself super frustrated with somebody because you don't know why they're doing it that way, why they're making it hard, I don't know why, all these things, you need to become curious about why that is. Instead of being frustrated and feeling like they're not doing what you think they should be doing, become curious. Ask some questions to yourself. I spent a lot of time on my ride home becoming curious if something didn't go the way I thought, or someone did something that I thought was opposite of what I thought they should do. Well, why are they holding that perspective? What do you think? I asked myself, what do you think, Felicia, is driving that? And I become curious about that, not wedged to my curiosities and my assumptions, but I become curious. And then when I'm given the opportunity, I ask the question, because curiosity shouldn't just lead you to assumptions unanswered. It should lead you to ask the proper questions to get the proper outcomes. Okay, cool. And the final practice is study an organization like you study people. Do not just learn the job, learn the organization. And what does that mean? That means you have to understand how decisions get made, who influence leaders, what the culture rewards, what behaviors create trust, and what behaviors are going to damage credibility. Because leadership isn't only about understanding the people, it's about really understanding the systems. And people often don't like systems. They're like, oh, it's just bureaucracy. Yes, you're right. There's bureaucracy. But just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not going to exist or it's not going to impact how you move in your world. So let's get into our reflection question for this week. So in this week, when you're in your next meeting, I want you to spend the first 5 minutes observing instead of preparing your response. So instead of thinking about what you're going to say, observe. Notice who's speaking, who's listening, who's influencing, who's resisting, who's encouraging, who's withdrawing. And let me tell you, in one meeting, all those things can exist, depending on how large that group is. And again, I geek out on this. I find it fascinating. But once you spent the first 5 minutes noticing that and jotting some notes for yourself, I want you to ask yourself, what did I notice that I would have missed 6 months ago? So what am I noticing about the dynamics of those people that I would have missed 6 months ago? Social awareness, game changer. Game changer for leaders who want to continue to climb the ladder to the highest levels of their career. You can't make it to that level without social awareness. I don't know a leader, and I'm thinking to myself before I say this. Yes, it's correct. I don't know a leader who has made it to the top of their career without social awareness. So if you think it's something like, I don't need to be doing all of that, cool. And you can opt out. But if your goal is to get to the highest level and to lead large organizations and to have, large corporate discussions, you're going to have to know how to do social awareness. So let me leave you with this. Some of the most influential leaders aren't always the smartest people in the room, but they're the most aware. And they understand people, they understand environments, they understand timing, they understand relationships, because leadership is not just about what you know, okay? It's about how well you understand the people that you are leading and working with. So understanding both the people you are leading and your colleagues. The room is always communicating. The question is, are you listening? That's the pod, guys. Listen, this is one of those topics, again, that we really don't talk about. People, again, talk about emotional intelligence in this broad general awareness. We don't talk about the quadrants, but particularly, we don't talk about the nuances of social awareness and how important it is. So if you have a girlfriend or a sister girl who you're like, hey, I know you're trying to climb the ladder, I want you to listen to this quick podcast and hear a little bit about social awareness, why it's important and why you need to get it. But also leave me some comments. Leave me some comments on the podcast wall. Subscribe, whether it's YouTube or Apple or Spotify. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what your questions are on Instagram, all at Join the Climb. I want to hear from you. I want to know how you feel about social awareness. So I will leave with this. Remember, we are not just climbing careers. We are building ladders for all of our success. And so until next time, keep climbing, keep striving. See you next week.
Thanks for tuning into the Climb Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on wherever you listen to podcasts. For updates and behind-the-scenes content, make sure you're following us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Join the Climb. Until next time, keep climbing and keep thriving, sis. See you next episode.